US Secretary of State Antony Blinken came to the region to sell a ceasefire plan unveiled by the president and endorsed by the UN Security Council. Joe Biden says it was an Israeli proposal, but there were conflicting narratives. Israel has maintained its goal is to destroy Hamas, and Hamas wants a permanent ceasefire and the withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza. Well, today, Blinken has blamed Hamas for the impasse. He says the group's response to the plan last night came with amendments and that some of them are workable, some of them are not. He was addressing a press conference along with the Prime Minister of Qatar, which has been a key mediator between Hamas and Israel. Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani said a permanent ceasefire is the only viable solution for Gaza.
Hamas has proposed numerous changes to the proposal that was on the table. We discussed those changes last night with Egyptian colleagues and today with the Prime Minister. Some of the changes are workable, some are not.
We have reached a very dire point whereby it is imperative to reach permanent solution rather than temporary measures. This was part of our discussion whereby we are all seeking permanent solution to bring back peace and security to Gaza Strip as well as West Bank, let alone the peoples of the region.
Well, Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad sent their response to the US-backed proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza to the mediators on Tuesday. They sent their reply to the Qatari and Egyptian mediators on Tuesday night, and while the exact wording wasn't disclosed, they said the plan is, quote, responsible and positive. In a joint statement, they said the response prioritizes the interests of our Palestinian people and the necessity of completely stopping the ongoing aggression against Gaza and Israel's withdrawal from the entire Gaza Strip. The Palestinian delegation expressed its readiness to deal positively to reach an agreement to end this war against our people, based on a sense of national responsibility. But they also proposed amendments to the overall proposal. Those changes include Israeli troops pulling out immediately from the Rafah border crossing and the Philadelphia corridor, which runs along the border with Egypt. Well, we are live in central Gaza, the Jordanian capital Amman, but first let's head to the White House and speak to Kimberly Halkett there. Kimberly, give us some context for this. Tell us what was in that ceasefire proposal.
The ceasefire proposal that was laid out back in May of the 31st certainly laid out various stages that the U.S. president hoped would be amenable to Hamas. Of course, we now know that there are changes that Hamas is looking for, some that the president says are workable, some that the Secretary of State says also are not workable. And so this is something that the White House is now trying to work through. But as we know, the main goal in all of this is to try and end the conflict, something that has been an ongoing challenge. And the other main goal in all of this is to ease the suffering of the Palestinian people. As we know, there are now 37,000 casualties and rising. And to ease the suffering in terms of not only ending the fighting, but also to get humanitarian aid in, as we know, this is a humanitarian crisis. So in terms of the proposal, what we know is that there are three stages, one to end the fighting, one to bring out the withdrawal of Israeli troops, given the fact that this is Israel's war on Gaza, and also to get that humanitarian aid in the various increments. And so this is what the plan lays out. And in terms of this proposal, what we know from the U.S. president is that each step and each increment is one that builds upon in terms of trying to get to an ultimate solution of ultimately building on something lasting and enduring in the eyes of the White House.
Kimberly, many thanks for that. Kimberly Halkett, live at the White House in Washington, D.C. OK, for more on this story, let's go to Hamdah Salhut, who's joining us from the Jordanian capital, Amman. Hamdah, well, the Biden administration has very clearly and repeatedly blamed Hamas for derailing any progress when it comes to a potential ceasefire. What is Israel's position on it?
Look, Neve, from the get-go, not just in this round of negotiations, but in all previous ones, the Israelis have pointed the finger at Hamas, saying that they have unreasonable and, quote, delusional demands. In this latest round of talks, Israeli officials have said that the Hamas proposal falls short of what exactly Israel is looking for. Additionally, we have to remember that even if all the captives were released, Israel has still said that the war would continue, no matter how long a pause in the fighting would be. So that means that they're saying until all of those goals of the war are achieved, and remember there are three. The first is to release all of the remaining Israeli captives, to ensure that Gaza no longer poses a threat to Israel, and the complete destruction of Hamas both politically and militarily. And Israel is saying until all of those goals are achieved, the war is not going to end. So Israel again pointing the finger at Hamas, saying that they are unwilling to meet Israel's demands, again saying they're unrealistic.
All right, Hamdah Salhut live for us in the Jordanian capital, Amman. Let's head to central Gaza and speak to Tareq Abu Azzoum, who's outside the Al-Aqsa hospital in Deir el-Balah. And Tareq, there has been a frustrating lack of progress, I think that's the best way of putting it, in terms of reaching a conclusion to these ceasefire hopes. And those hopes matter most where you are.
Yeah, that's right. We generally right now following all the latest regarding the ceasefire deal that has been backed by the United States and presented for both Hamas and Israel in order to accept. But what we do hear from Palestinians is that they have a great sense of cautious optimism. It means that they do not want to feel ultimate optimism as multiple previous times where these kinds of negotiations have come and hit a dead end. But in contrast, they are trying to follow all the latest developments. They'd like to say that they are feeling the mounting American pressure and regional pressure on both Hamas and Israel in order to push deeper and to accept the deal that has been brought to the table that would guarantee an end for the fighting. But Hamas has presented some sort of amendments for the deal, represented and stressed on the fact that the Israeli army must completely withdraw from Gaza. Alongside, they must also withdraw from Philadelphia corridor. And for Palestinians, any deal that cannot really guarantee the return of the Palestinians to the north of the Strip, to from where they were displaced, would be meaningless and even baseless due to their ongoing hardships and challenges resulted after that internal displacement that took place after Hamas October the 7th attack on the Israeli communities. And from the Israeli side, they insist on going with the option of renewing the war after the end of that deal, saying that they are so keen to militarily and politically dismantle Hamas, alongside with the ongoing and growing pressure that they would like to make sure that Gaza won't be any more representing a threat for Israel. So there are still big gaps between both parts, but Palestinians believe that there are still more ongoing efforts being made by regional mediators, including Qatar and Egypt, to narrow the gaps of disagreement. But the grim reality for Palestinians, as we have been hearing from them, they want only a ceasefire that can help them to go back to the north of the Strip, get aid, and at the same time have a kind of mitigation for the aggravating humanitarian crisis that day by day is getting much more worse in light of the Israeli full tight closure of all crossing borders and the prevention of the flow of aid into the territory, which had posed more significant threats on the lives of Palestinians as the levels of malnutrition are increasing, in particular in the northern part of Gaza, and families here are depending on all kinds of commercial products that are affordable in the Palestinian market. So ceasefire now is what Palestinians are urgently needing in order to generally witness a sense of calm on the ground amid the Israeli ongoing and unrelenting military attacks across the Strip, Neve.
All right, Tareq, many thanks as always. Tareq Abu Azzoum outside the Al-Aqsa hospital in Deir el-Balah, that's in central Gaza. Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.